Two families, same town, same school district, same money in the bank. One buys a house. One keeps renting and invests the difference. 9 years later, they are almost exactly even, and for the entire 8 years before that, the renter is ahead. Not slightly ahead, tens of thousands of dollars ahead. And there's one version of this where the renter is still winning at year 12, in the exact situation most parents assume is the strongest argument for buying. By the end of this video, you'll have both of their lives, year by year, with a running total on screen the whole time. Every cost people forget on both sides, and the exact point where the answer flips. Which matters more for you than for them, because the thing that decides it is not the market. It's how long your family actually stays. This isn't a video about whether owning a home is a good dream. It's a video about the number, because the number is the part nobody shows you before you sign. If you've ever sat in a rental you like, doing the arithmetic on what you're throwing away, and felt that low guilt that you should have bought years ago. If you've ever looked at a house in the district you want, seen the price and felt your stomach drop, followed immediately by the fear that waiting another year means missing it forever. If you've ever had a relative say, "Rent is just paying someone else's mortgage," in a tone that ended the conversation and had no numbers to answer with, then this is your video. That relative isn't lying to you. They're just quoting a rule that has a condition attached, and nobody ever tells you the condition. I'm Alora, and this is the Finance Mom HQ, where we talk about the money stuff nobody ever actually sits moms down to explain. So let's put real numbers on it. Jess and Nadia again. Same two families I built from national averages, because everything about them is identical except one decision. Both families want the same school district. The house they're looking at costs $420,000, which is roughly the national median right now. The comparable 3-bedroom rental in that same district is $2,300 a month. Both families have saved the same amount. Both have the same income, the same 2 kids, the same everything. Nadia buys. She puts 20% down. That's $84,000, and pays about $10,500 in closing costs, so about $94,500 leaves her hands on day one. Her mortgage, at 6.5%, is about $2,100 a month in principal and interest. Jess rents the same kind of house for $2,300 a month, keeps her $94,500 invested, and every month that owning would have cost more than renting, she invests that difference too. Here's the running total, both at 0. Let's walk the years. Year 1. And this is where the first thing people forget shows up, because Nadia's housing cost is not her mortgage payment. Her mortgage, principal and interest, is about $2,100. Then property taxes. Call it a bit over 1% of the home's value, so roughly $385 a month. Homeowner's insurance, another $150. And maintenance, which is the one everybody waves off. Budget about 1% of the house's value a year, which is another $350 a month. Nobody spends exactly that every month, but across a decade you spend it. The water heater, the roof, the tree that comes down, the dishwasher that dies the week of a birthday party. Add that up and Nadia's real monthly cost of owning is about $3,000. Not $2,100, $3,000. That gap, the extra 30 to 40% stacked on top of the mortgage payment, is the single most common mistake in this entire decision. And there's a second thing hiding in Nadia's column that never appears on a mortgage statement at all. The $94,500 she handed over on day 1 stopped being money and became a house. It isn't gone. She'll get it back and more when she sells. But for as long as she owns, it isn't compounding anywhere. Jess's identical $94,500 is sitting in the market doing what money does when you leave it alone. That difference alone is most of the early gap between them. And it's invisible, because nobody sends you a monthly statement for the returns you didn't earn. A quick word on the thing everyone asks about here, which is the tax deduction on mortgage interest. It's real, but it's much smaller than it was, because the standard deduction is now high enough that most families never itemize at all, which means most homeowners get exactly 0 tax benefit from their mortgage interest. If you're in a high-cost market with a large loan, it can still matter. For the median family in this video, it changes nothing, and I've left it out for that reason rather than quietly using it to make buying look better. So Nadia pays $3,000 a month. Jess pays $2,300. Jess invests the $700 difference every month, on top of the $94,500 she never handed over. And at the end of year 1, The running total reads, Jess's investments are worth about $110,000. Nadia's position, what she'd actually walk away with if she sold, after the roughly 6% it costs to sell a house, is about $76,000. Jess is ahead by about $34,000 after 1 year. In the scenario where everybody in your family would tell you Nadia made the smart, grown-up decision, I want to be fair to Nadia, because that number sounds worse than her situation actually is. She isn't down $34,000 in any real sense. Most of that gap is simply the cost of getting in and getting out, the closing costs she already paid, and the selling costs she hasn't paid yet. It's a transaction cost, and it's front-loaded, and time is what dissolves it. That's the whole reason this comparison changes as the years go by. Years 2 through 5. Nadia's mortgage payment doesn't move. That's the real advantage of owning, and it's a big one. Jess's rent goes up about 3% a year, so by year 5 she's paying about $2,589 instead of $2,300, which means the gap between them narrows every single year. Nadia's house is appreciating, call it 3.5% a year, and every mortgage payment kills off a little more of what she owes. And there's something real happening in Nadia's column that the board can't show. Her payment is frozen for 30 years while Jess's rent climbs every single year, which means Nadia's housing cost, in real terms, gets cheaper every year she stays, and Jess's gets more expensive. She also can't be told to leave. No landlord decides to sell the house out from under her in the middle of 4th grade. She can paint, renovate, put a swing in the yard, and keep a dog without asking anyone. And every mortgage payment quietly forces her to save whether she feels like saving that month or not, which for a lot of families is worth more than any spreadsheet can express, because the alternative, invest the difference every month without fail for a decade, requires a discipline most people genuinely don't have. I'm not going to pretend those things are worth nothing. They're just not dollars, and this video is about dollars. By the end of year 5, the running total reads, Jess about $175,000, Nadia about $154,000. Jess is still ahead, by about $21,000. 5 years in. And year 5 is exactly where I need to stop, because there's a statistic that belongs right here. The average American family moves about every 5 years. Read that against the board. The average family sells at the precise moment buying is still losing, and then does it again in the next town, paying another set of closing costs and another set of selling costs, and wonders why owning never seems to build what everyone promised it would. And it isn't only jobs that move families. It's a second baby and a house that suddenly has 1 bedroom too few. It's a marriage that ends. It's aging parents in another state. It's a neighborhood that changes, or a school that changes, or a commute that stops being survivable. When you buy, every one of those ordinary life events costs you roughly 6% to sell, plus the closing cost to buy again somewhere else. Call it 12% of a house to change your mind. When you rent, changing your mind costs you a security deposit and a weekend. If Nadia's job moves her at year 3, Jess is ahead by about $28,000. If it happens at year 5, Jess is ahead by about $21,000. Buying a house and leaving inside 5 years is, in pure arithmetic terms, close to the most expensive thing a family can do with housing. Years 6 through 9. Now watch what happens, because this is the part the first 5 years hide. Jess's rent keeps climbing. By year 9, she's paying about $2,900 a month for the same house she rented for $2,300. Nadia's payment is still the same as it was in year 1. That's the crossover happening in slow motion, and it happens for the least exciting reason in personal finance. One number stayed still while the other one didn't. Meanwhile, Nadia's loan balance has dropped from $336,000 to about $292,000, and her house is worth about $572,000. End of year 9. The running total reads, Jess about $244,000, Nadia about $246,000. That's it. That's the crossover, year 9. After 8 full years of Jess being ahead, Nadia passes her, by about $2,000, which is a rounding error, but the direction never reverses after this. By year 12, Nadia is ahead by about $25,000. By year 15, about $46,000, and pulling away faster every year, because a fixed payment against 15 years of rent increases is not a fair fight. So the honest answer to should we buy is not yes or no. It's a number of years. In this scenario, If your family stays put 9 years or more, buying wins and keeps winning. If you leave before that, renting and investing the difference wins. And the earlier you leave, the more decisively. Which brings me to the part of this that's actually about having kids, and it cuts in a direction I didn't expect. Kids make you stay. That's the whole thing. A family without children moves for a job, for a partner, for a neighborhood they like better, for no reason at all. A family with a kid in second grade at a school she loves, with friends on the street and a teacher who finally gets her. That family does not move casually. School stability is the single strongest anchor most families ever have, and it lands you on exactly the side of year 9 where buying wins. There's a number behind that too. Something close to a quarter of families with children under 18 still moved in a single recent year. So plenty of families with kids do move. But the ones who move least are the ones with a child settled in a school they want to stay in. That's the anchor. Not the mortgage, not the market, not the interest rate everyone obsesses over. A second grader. So if you have young children and you found the district you want, you are far more likely than the average household to clear that crossover. That's the strongest financial argument for buying that exists for parents. And it has almost nothing to do with the housing market. It's about your kid's third grade class. And then there's the version where all of that reverses. And this is the one I most want you to see. Because it's the situation almost every parent in this decision is actually standing in. Say the district you want isn't the median district. Say it's the good one. The one that shows up in every conversation at pickup. Homes in the highest rated school districts routinely cost 10 to 20% more than comparable homes nearby. And in the very top districts, that premium can run far higher than that. So the same house you were looking at for $420,000 is $504,000 in the district you actually want. Here's what that does. Nadia's monthly cost of owning goes from about $3,000 to about $3,580. But the rent in that district, and this is the part that breaks people's assumptions, does not rise anywhere near as fast as the purchase price does. Rents track what local families can pay every month. Purchase prices track what buyers will bid for access to those schools, and there is no ceiling on that. So Jess is still renting in the same excellent district, paying roughly the same $2,300, while Nadia is now paying nearly $1,300 a month more than Jess to live on the same street. Run that forward. At year 9, Jess is ahead by about $70,000. At year 12, 3 full years past the point where buying normally wins, Jess is still ahead by about $78,000, and the gap is growing, not shrinking. Let me say that plainly, because it is the opposite of what everyone believes. In a district with a steep school premium, renting in the Great District and investing the difference beats buying in the Great District. Not for a couple of years. For well over a decade. The very thing that makes the district worth wanting is the thing that makes buying there the losing move. And notice what that does to the most common piece of advice parents get, which is, stretch for the house in the good district because you're buying the schools. The math says you can have the schools without buying them. Rent the district, invest the difference. Your kid attends exactly the same school either way. If this is landing, hit subscribe. This channel exists because nobody sits moms down and actually explains this stuff. And every mom who joins is one more mom who gets told plainly. So let's put all 3 versions on the board, because your family is one of them. Version 1. Median-priced home, district you're happy with, and you plan to stay a long time. Buying loses for 8 years and wins from year 9 onward. And if your kids are young and the school is right, you will very likely be there. Buy and stop apologizing for the years it looks like a mistake. Version 2. Median-priced home, but your work moves you. Or your family might grow out of the house. Or you honestly don't know where you'll be in 5 years. Rent, invest the difference, and ignore anyone who tells you that's throwing money away. At year 5, that decision is worth about $21,000, and it comes with the freedom to move without paying 12% of a house to do it. Version 3. The district carries a steep premium. Rent in it. Invest the difference. Send your kid to exactly the school you wanted, and be somewhere between $70,000 and $80,000 ahead a decade later. This is the version nobody says out loud, and it's the version an enormous number of families are in. 2 more things before I let you go, 1 for each side. If you buy, the crossover is real, but it's not automatic. It assumes you actually stay, and it assumes you actually fund the maintenance. That 1% a year isn't optional. and every family that skips it for a decade pays it in one afternoon when the roof goes. Set that money aside monthly like a bill, in its own account, and the crossover in year 9 will show up exactly as advertised. And one more thing for the buying side, because it's the mistake I see most. The crossover assumes you bought a house you can actually carry. If the payment is so tight that you can't fund maintenance, can't keep an emergency fund, and can't put anything into retirement for a decade, then you didn't buy a house. You bought a very expensive obligation that happens to have a yard. In that case, none of the year 9 math applies, because the years before 9 are what break the family. The house being a good investment eventually is no comfort at all if it costs you the years in between. If you rent, the entire renting side of this math falls apart if you don't invest the difference. Every bit of Jess's lead comes from the fact that the $94,500 and the $700 a month went somewhere and grew. Rent and spend the difference, and the person telling you that you wasted a decade will be right. Rent and invest the difference, automatically, on payday, and you are not behind. For the first 8 years, you're ahead. I'll tell you where our family landed because I don't hand out numbers I haven't run on myself. When David and I were looking, we found the house in the district we wanted, and it was about 15% above what the same house cost 2 neighborhoods over. I did this exact math on a Sunday, badly, on the back of a receipt, and the honest answer was that we should have rented in that district for years and invested the gap. We bought anyway because we wanted the yard and I wanted to stop asking permission to paint a wall, and I'd make that trade again. But I want you to make it on purpose, knowing what it costs, instead of hearing, rent is throwing money away, and treating that as the end of the conversation. It isn't the end. It's the beginning of a question about how long you're staying. So tell me, how long has your family actually stayed in one place? Not how long you planned to, how long you really did. Drop it in the comments because that single number decides this whole video for you, and I genuinely want to know how many of us are above year 9 and how many of us are nowhere near it. Next time on the actual numbers. Paying off the house early versus investing the difference, with the running total all the way to the end. I'm Alora. This is the Finance Mom HQ. Raising kids and retirement funds. Go take care of both, and I'll see you in the next one.